Okay, we are gonna do a small embroidery today, a little digitizing of a wee little seahorse. It's left chest logo size, and it's something I drafted, or not drafted, I doodled earlier today. So it'll just be a fun, cute little thing. It's only 3 colors, and we're gonna look at how to draft with 3 fills. We're going to look at how to connect pieces so that it uses the least amount of trims, and we're going to look at what does and doesn't give us good stitches in terms of the curves and when things are too sharp and how to clean up an edge. It's going to be good. So let's do it. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in. You can see I've got the hoop on the screen here for one of my small round hoops. We don't really need it on here anymore. I was just using that to kind of gauge the scale. The size of this is like, what, 4 inches, I think? Yeah, about 4 inches, a little smaller. So let's look at what we've got here. I think what I want to do is build from the inside out. And I want to do this because I want the only piece that I have that's in, the only color I have that's in pieces is the like dark purple black color. It's really, really dark purple technically, but it kind of looks black on screen. It is in 3 pieces, right? We've got it on the nose here, under the eye, and then following down the bottom of the body. And to save ourselves from having to put in 3 trims when this stitches out later, we can just do it first, connect all the pieces, and then build it from the inside out. So it's gonna push all that fabric from the inside out to the outside of the body, so we're not worried about anything getting bunched or puckered or screwed up. So I think we'll do the main body first and then bring up the eye and then come over here to the nose, and then we'll lay in this medium purple and then the bright purple. So I'm going to use my complex fill button, which you can find right here. If you have hotkeys set up, I have it as a C on my computer, so either one works. It's gonna go ahead and default to all the normal default settings in your software, and mine defaults to blue. I'll change that after I stitch it, or we can change it now, I suppose. We'll make it this dark burgundy color. And it's gonna be a 3.8 density, which is a good density in general. So I'm gonna zoom in real far so I can see what I'm doing. And you're gonna notice that when I'm stitching this inside edge, where it's going to overlap with another color, that is going to be a little bit overlapped in the drawing by a few points, so that I have room when it stitches out for the second color to sew on top of the first color. It's going to make it so there's no gaps in my embroidery. So let's keep going. We're going to get all the way around. And I'm not going to be very fussy at all with this. You can get as fussy as you want to, but I find that on something this small, we have wiggle room, frankly. It looks a lot bigger on screen than it is in life, you know? Okay, so now that I've done this, you will find that I like to square off some of my corners like that. What I just did there on the tip, and I'll do it again. I like to come down to a bit, instead of coming straight up, I like to square it out just a little bit. It's not significant, but it kind of butches it up a little bit when it sews, and I like that because I want it to have some provenance, and I don't want it to just be one stitch right at the very end. That's not going to give us very much, right? If it's just one tiny little thread right there, which might happen depending on where the fill direction line is, and I don't want to deal with that, so we're not going to do that. And I like to give myself little corners or little flat bits wherever I can. So you're seeing me digitize this. What am I doing? I am laying in all of my points that the line is going to follow around. The left click, which is what I'm doing right now, gives me a curve, and the right click gives me a 90-degree angle, or not a 90-degree angle, but a hard point. It's not going to give the line any curve. There's no bezel information being put in when I do that. And I'm doing that top and bottom on this piece because I want a little bit of oomph, as we've already discussed. So left click, right click. I still am gonna do a little bit. I was debating here on this corner because it's getting such a wide angle if I wanted to give myself a little flat bit, but for consistency's sake, I'm going to. I think it's helpful. When I get up to this top of the neck, I'm gonna just keep rounding it right out because there is no point. There's no point to doing anything there because there's no point. We're gonna keep going. Square, bring it up. And because I'm getting to the end of a shape where I'm closing it, you can see if I put my crosshairs here, that's a lovely shape. Now, if I just push enter without giving it a right click first somewhere, the line is probably gonna do a whoop-de-doo, and I don't want it to do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this with a point really close to that point with a right click and then push enter so that I'm getting a straight line. I will show you what that whoop-de-doo looks like here in a second, so it's something you can avoid. With the complex fill tool, it's gonna guide us through a couple of steps next. The first one is gonna be holes. I don't have any holes in this design that need to be filled, so we're gonna go ahead and click enter. My start stop points, I like to start in the meat of my very first stitch, and I do this just in case there's a little bit of oil on the foot of my machine when it sews out. It'll get covered up by the stitches and I don't have to try and clean it off later. So if you have run into that problem where you get a little bit of machine oil, this guy every now and again, when I just first do maintenance, the very first t-shirt that I put on there, sometimes they'll leave a little bit of oil residue. And I've got Q-tips over there and I tend to clean it off and avoid that, but just in case, it's a good practice to get into. And I'm gonna put my end stitch here because I wanna go from here to my eyeball next. Enter. And it autofills a direction for us. If we turn on the stitches, we can look at what it's doing. We'll zoom out a little bit. That looks pretty snazzy. And if we check our complex fill, I have a feeling right now, or if we check our elements, it'll show us any errors. And I've got a feeling right now these are both because there are no tie-ins and tie-offs yet, because I haven't gone on to the next thing. So let's go ahead and just push walk normal and stitch from where I ended to here and click enter. Yeah, and then because I put that next element in, the warnings went away because it didn't have a tie-in and a tie-out. I don't know why it does that on a complex fill. It might be something in the settings, but I just know it's gonna happen, so I just ignore it until I need to care. The next thing I'm gonna do before I do anything else is save my document. If you are anything like me and you do a lot of digitizing and then you change your mind and you wanna make big changes, sometimes this will be saved in your temp files and I don't have enough memory for it to convert something from one stitch to something else if there's a million stitches involved. So if I save it as I go, which I have to get better about doing, that won't be an issue because there is enough memory freed up for that to happen. So I'm just gonna go into here, I'm gonna save this. We can save it as Seahorse 1 because this is my very first Seahorse I've ever drafted, or digitized. And now we're gonna go on. We're gonna continue now to the eye. So we've already started our pathing. We've done the belly, we walked to the eye. I'm gonna do the eye, I'll walk to the nose, do the nose, change color. So let's zoom in so we can see what we're doing. I'm gonna do this as another complex fill, and I'm gonna start on the inside of this shape. And this one's gonna get a wee bit snug in those corners, so I'm really gonna square it off because I don't want it to get snug. I don't need it to get snug. And I'm gonna kind of ignore what I drew here because I want the bottom of the eye to have more weight than the top. Let's back this up. Do you notice what I'm doing? I'm not giving myself enough space to get into overlap with the other color. I'm ignoring my own rules. Okay, so give ourselves a nice couple points of space. And I am still going to do the thing I said where I want more weight on the bottom, so I'm gonna give myself a little bit more space on the bottom than I did on the top. And that is intentional. Okay, end it with a hard line. It'll come straight down when I push enter and clean that up. No holes. We're gonna start here, and I would love to stop at the bottom, and then we'll let it autofill. And then let's do our walk normal from here into the nose. Go ahead and check our elements, which I'll just leave that tab open now. No reason to close it. And we're looking pretty good. Now, let's go ahead and finish the third color, and then we're gonna look at the stitch directions. So I've got my complex fill selected, and I'm gonna just start going around. I'm gonna square this nose off because I think it's cute. And I think it won't hurt anything if I do, giving myself some nice square points there. And I really do want kind of an angle to happen. Nose curve, under, like the under part of the nose, and then a straight angle, because I think it's gonna look really cute. So let's give ourselves a nice angle right there. And then we can give ourselves a nice bit of overlap in the second color. We'll start here, and we'll just end at the bottom, because why not? It's gonna be a tie-off. Okay, so let's look at the stitch directions of what we have here so far. If we look at in a nice good view, everything looks really good on the first one. I'm happy with the nose. What I'm not happy with is the top of the eye up here. The top of that eye, the shape isn't super great for what we tried to do. And you can see that it's just getting really thick right here and giving me a nice hard line, and I'm not loving that. So let's go ahead and click on that shape. And then right here, we're gonna insert stitch direction, and we're going to adjust what the stitch direction is doing. I kind of want it to fill in around the shape. So it's gonna be kind of this curvular thing. Curvular? That's not really a word. It's gonna do this kind of curving thing. Now, we need to be careful that it doesn't get too tight on this inner edge, which it could very well do, because it's quite a small space. And it's already not thrilled with us here. Shocking. Shocking. We changed something and it got mad. We can fix this though. I think it's just because it's a little bit on the tight side. And I think if we were to open it up a little bit, and then maybe let the stitch directions, there we go, kind of come to a point at the end, that'll take care of it. It was just getting a little dense on that bit, but that's looking pretty good now. I'm pretty happy with that. If we turn off our image, we'll see what we're left with. We've got our inside body, it connects to the eye, which connects to the nose, and that's a good starting point. So we'll put in our second color now, and it's gonna be the mid-tone purple. So for ours, we will just, let me select my last element before I select complex tool, and then when I change the color, it will, which I'll just use this like random purple for this fill, it will automatically go to the next color in the correct order. If I don't select the last element and I were still selected on the third element, it's gonna insert that color in between the two, and we're gonna have to reorder later, which is annoying. So just select the element and life will be easier. I'm gonna turn the stitches off so I can see my full design under here, get zoomed in, and we're gonna just start going for it. So same rules apply. We want to give ourselves a little bit of overstitch room, few points above what we're doing so that it can overlap with the other color. And we'll do that on every color until you get to your last color that you're putting in, and that one will be pretty much exactly as it's supposed to be. So we're gonna keep going down, And then we'll end right where our colors overlap and come back up. On my software, I have the thing turned on, the setting turned on, where if I get to the edge of the screen, it's supposed to scroll for me, but it doesn't always do it. So I use the scroll on my mouse. It trips me up every now and again when I'm not paying attention. I'm like, wait, why am I not moving? But it's easy enough to deal with. We can get a little bit closer there. There we go. And you'll see now that I'm sewing on top of color number 1 or sewing right at the border, we're gonna square this off a little bit too. I'm not leaving myself extra room because I don't need it anymore. I just need to overlap. Okay, so this is the first time we're gonna use the hole tool. Step 1, after you push enter, it's going to let you insert a hole, and we need to do that. And we're gonna start right here where the white meets the color that we're drafting, so that we can be really precise about this, because we're going to be inserting this hole along both that white edge that's the background of the image and the black edge that is our eyeball. And I need to be a little bit more subtle. There we go. I pushed enter when I got the hole put in, and now it's going to ask me where I want my start and stops to be. And same rule as always, I like to start right in the middle of something just in case. And I think we can end at the bottom. Let's just end down here. It's a nice natural place for it to happen. So if we turn on our colors, we can see that we've got a pretty lovely shape happening here. Now, what will automatically happen is that your stitch line is gonna get set in at the same angle as everything else that you've sewn. And if you want really crisp clarity, ideally your stitches are going to be sewing at like a 60-degree angle to each other, because it'll complement the stitch. It'll offset the second stitch that you put on top of it really with a really crisp, clean line, and it's not going to pull apart the fibers. Right? If we were sewing at a 90-degree angle, anything that's stitching here is going to pull apart the threads that it lands between. But if it's at a 60-degree angle, it's going to create a mesh. So we want it to be a mesh. So let's go ahead and change our stitch line to be at a 60-degree angle, give or take. Ooh, that looks really nice. Now, we'll have to test it out and see. See if I can adjust that a little bit. We'll have to test it out and see. We might run into trouble with some of these stitches pulling or sinking, but I don't think we will. It's really just right here. We might run into trouble there, but I have a feeling it's gonna blend, and I think it's gonna be fine, because it's such a small little area. All right, we're on our last color. So turn my stitches back off so I can see what I'm doing, and complex fill. And let's go ahead and set this color to this, what is that, Florani pink? Is that what it said? No, floral pink. Oh, it's a Madeira palette. Okay, floral pink. It'll be a nice bright color for us to look at. And on this layer, this is our last color. Everywhere we're putting this color, no overlap is needed. Go right to where you want it to go, right to the edge. So we'll start in a nice little corner that's easy to see. And we'll come up the nose, come up the top, keeping it nice and curvy. I'm still gonna do my little square corners because I think it will make everything sew out so much nicer in the long run. Bring it up here again. I'm gonna square this bit off because I think that's gonna look nice. And I might exaggerate this one just a bit. There we go. I think that's looking good. I like that undercut that's giving us. We'll see if the stitches like it. When you're getting this small and this granular, sometimes what you put in doesn't really stitch out well. And you can see I'm not being very precious. If it were something that a customer gave me and it needed to be exactly on the edge, exactly what they drew, it's a logo, it's something, you know, it's a piece of artwork, etc., then I would be a little bit more delicate with this. But because I drew this really, really quickly, I don't know that I necessarily drew it the best. So I'm kind of giving myself some artistic license here as I fill this in, because I can. And it's mine, and I can do whatever I want. And so can you if you draw your own artwork. You can do whatever you want. But I'm kind of exaggerating a bit of what I drew, and I'm also giving myself some points here where I know my doodle got a little bit skewed, you know, up or down or left or right. So I'm kind of giving that pivot point right in the center to make it a little bit more even, which I think is good in this case, though not necessary here because we're getting into a new angle. But maybe on this one I'll do it again. Bring that down to a square. Enter. We have no holes. We're gonna start right there in the head. And I actually think I want to end maybe here, somewhere there, to get the garment to push in that direction. And the way that will happen is if I change the stitch direction. Because as we know, the stitch direction wants to be at a 60-degree angle to what we've done previously. And I want it to be something like that. And then let's zoom out a bit. Let's just look at just this last layer because I want to see where it's going to finish sewing at. Yeah, see how it's going to push out there? That's really good. So what it's going to do is put down the underlay, sew from the nose up, come all the way down to the tip of the tail, sew up, and then it's going to push out from what we've already sewn, and that's great. That's going to be ideal. It's a larger section, and we have two quite established long chunks of color. So what we don't want to do is sew into that. We want to sew from it in a way, and that's going to really help us out. If you ran into a shape where you couldn't get it to naturally do that with the stitch line, you could break it up into segments. For instance, I could, let me put this in vector. I'll draw you a couple of lines where I could break it up at. So if I were going to draw a vector here, I could put a, that didn't really work, did it? Put that at the bottom, there we go. I could do the front half as a piece. I could do the tail as a piece from here down. And then I could do this section as a piece. If I had to put in another one, I could break it up at the neck here maybe. And the important thing here, if I were to do this, would be that I want to make sure all my stitch lines are going in the same direction, and I want my joins to overlap a few points, just to make sure we don't get any gaps in there. And it really only works super well if you're going to be doing a like a tatami fill, which I think this is, I don't know what they call it in DesignShop, but you know, just that baseline fill, the preset fill. If you're doing something that is more shaped, if you're doing something that's a specialty fill, let's see, let's look at this one. If we go into properties and I set this to a 17, which is one that I rather like. Why didn't that, oh. Okay, well, DesignShop just quit on me. Hope it saved. And this is what I'm talking about. It especially doesn't like it when I use vectors. Okay, it's saved. We're good. Let's make sure it is recording. Okay, we're back. It's recording. Glad we didn't lose any progress. Let's look at setting the pink to a preset number, and I really like 17. That's one of my favorites. So if we were to, it gives really pretty definition. So if we were to do something like this, and we tried to segment it up with like 17, 17, 17, 17, and they're overlapping, those lines are not gonna line up. So you have to be kind of selective about what you're gonna do if you're doing that method. I'm gonna leave this one as 17, and then maybe we'll do something different for this guy. What could be cute running into 17? Let's see what the auto split looks like. That could be something fun. Oh, push okay. No, the auto split's not gonna do it for us. That would work better if it were a larger section. Let's see what 7 looks like. Oh, that's kind of nice. Gives us a little bit of definition in there without being overpowering. And then I think we're gonna leave the dark bit alone, because it doesn't need to be more than that. I think we can also change our colors up, but the way it's going to work for me in this design is it's gonna go dark, medium, light, or deepest, medium, and highest value. And when I do that, I specifically like to leave less texture in the dark, more texture in the medium, lots of texture in the lightest or the brightest hue, because it's gonna really make those look more dimensional, and the darker parts are gonna recede more from the eye, and the higher texture is gonna pop more on the eye. I think this looks awesome. If we wanted to, we could fill in the eyeball. It's a little weird, but I do like to leave holes in things sometimes when I'm embroidering, especially if I'm gonna do it on a heavy piece of knitwear, like a sweater or like a fleece lined sweater or something that has a bit of puff and thickness to it, because the eye in a circle like that will kind of like puff and bulge and be interesting. If you wanted to fill that in, you certainly could. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. So let's say maybe you followed along to this and you want to do it. Let's zoom in here. We're gonna get I'm gonna click on my last element again now that I've been changing stuff to make sure that's the thing that's selected. I'm gonna do a complex fill. I'm actually gonna go ahead and do a circle, because why not? Might as well. Make it easy on ourselves. And I'll just fill that in, right? Okay, let's change the color. Let's maybe make it gray. And then let's also move it to the front, which I thought I could do that by clicking. Okay, maybe not. We'll just slide it up here to the top. Okay, so this is our first one now. The stitch line is a bit ambiguous for us in where we want that to go, because the stitch line of our dark tone color is a circle, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and follow the rule about 60 degrees with the top. This bit right here. So at least the top here will be nice and crisp. And if some of this sinks in the darkest color to a dark gray, I'm not gonna be too mad about that, because I think it's gonna kind of blend into the depths of this whole thing, which could be cool. So if we wanted an eye in there, we could have one. If we wanted this eye to be a bright color, it could be one. If we wanted this eye to be a pretty deeper color, it could be that. We could make it the same color as something that we're already digitizing. I don't recommend it, but you can. You do you. Maybe we make it black so that it's not super poppy. It just kind of lives. Up to you. I'm gonna delete it because I like it without an eye. I think it makes it more interesting. All right, and this is it. So our next step is just gonna be sew it out, see how it stitches, come back and make any adjustments if we need to, and then it'll be good to go. So I'm gonna go do that, and I'll be back. so I went back to the machine, I ran out a sample of it. It turned out really, really, really nicely overall. I'm quite happy with it. There are a couple wee issues. So if we look right at the eye, we see that the pink and the blue are or the blue and the red are kind of sinking in together right at the inside edge of the eye. And then I also had a false thread break on the blue where it gets really, really thin right on the edge of the eye. So we're gonna butch that up. And then I also think the eye doesn't have to be quite that large. I could make it a little smaller, which is gonna help us with our thread issue. So we're gonna zoom in here. Let's start with the inside eye. I'm going to select, using this the little star tool here, I'm gonna select all of my points here on the inside of the eye. And actually, how do I do that? I don't think yeah, that doesn't really work what I wanted to do. That was a silly choice. Undo that. We're not gonna do that. We're gonna move them individually. Okay, that's fine. We will bring all of these guys in. And actually we can leave the bottom alone. We're just gonna do this on the top. Bring in all the top points, which will help make this a little bit, make the eye a little smaller and also give us a little bit more room for overlap so that we can then butch up our second color. So I did the first color, I'm gonna go to the second color, and I'm going to bring this in a little bit as well. And it was right over here that I had that false thread break, because it gets really narrow. We can see where the direction of that is going, like wireframe to wireframe, edge to edge, and that's why it got mad. So we can bring this in, and we can butch that up, and I will correct those little bezels a little bit. I'm not really gonna mess with the bottom too much, because the bottom's cute. Cute as is. But I will go ahead and bring a little bit of this down, a little bit more, really widen that up a little bit. That's actually quite good. Click out of there. I'm gonna just bring these up so that they go to nothing, because I want them to go to nothing. And that should fix that issue. The other place that we run into some issue at the top of that eye is where some of the thread sinks into the color 1 thread was sinking into the color, not really sinking in, the color 2 thread. What did it do? The color 1 thread just kind of popped up more, basically. I actually think we have probably resolved that just by what we've done here. But we might be able to make it even better on ourselves by doing this, angling the stitches on this bit so that where it starts running into the second color at the top, it will kind of push those a little bit better. And I think we can kind of do that all the way around. Let's just check our elements. Looks good, looks clean. That should be fine. Let's see, is there anything else that bothered me on this one? Oh, the other thing that kind of bothered me on this one is right down here, where that weird little pink stitch is. It's just because it got a little separated from the rest of the pack. Aesthetically, I didn't love it, so we can clean that up just a little bit. And I think if we just kind of extend it so it's a little bit more purposeful, that will fix the issue in future. Now it feels more intentional instead of it was just like one, it was the width of it, right? There were just like the few little stitches grouped together, just didn't quite know what they were doing. They kind of, they drew too much attention. So we clean that up a little bit. And you'll notice also on this, I use 3 very, very different colors in kind of an intensity of like deep, middle, bright. And I tend to do that with projects like this on my first stitch out so I can see real clarity. I don't want to like think something's perfect only to find that it's not. And then have somebody else sew it out at some point in time and use different colors than I did, and it's not great. So I like to use really contrasting colors to make sure my edges are sharp, everything is really clean, everything makes sense. I'm happy with that. I think we have a cute little seahorse now that somebody will make something really lovely out of.